Hello, friends, both old and new. I'm John St. Baptiste, and we're doing something slightly different today. This is July 4th, the American Independence Day. It is important to a lot of people in my country. Um, for first off, for anyone who lives in the United Kingdom, this is not a middle finger or anything like that. It's something that I hold very important, and we live in some very, very, very messed up times right now. And I would just like to remind everyone that there is hope. There's goodness in the world, Mr. Frodo. There is good in the world, and that's worth fighting for. So that being said, I am going to read the Declaration of Independence. Now, this was released on July 4th, 1776. It was written slightly before that, and it, if you take it at what I think is its most basic moral and ethical level, is a statement of equality. And in our world, and especially our country right now, that's something that's extremely important. So, that all being said, I'm going to share this with you. I hope you enjoy my reading. Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the nature of God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experiences have shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms in which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses or usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces its design to direct them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for the future security. Such has been the patient suffrage of these colonies, and such is now necessary, which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, and having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless these people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He's called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of the public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for oppressing with manly firmness his invasions of the rights of people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large in their exercise, the state remaining, in the meantime, exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and the convulsions within. He's endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of the new appropriations of lands. He's obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He's made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount of the payment for their salaries. He's erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He's kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He's affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed forces among us. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they may commit on an inhabitant of the United States. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. For depriving us of many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretend offenses. For abolishing the free system of English laws in the neighboring provinces, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example fit for instrument for introducing the same absolute right into these colonies. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. For suspending our own legislators and declaring themselves invested in the power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He's abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He's plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroy the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, tyranny already begun, with circumstances and cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He's constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against the country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, and to fall themselves by their hands. He's excited a domestic insurrection amongst us, and has endeavored to bring us on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. By the way, I don't agree with that. Just telling you folks. That's the one paragraph in this that I do not agree with. Gotta say. In every age of the oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by reputed injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a threat, and is an unfit ruler of the free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We've warned them from time to time of attempts of their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We've reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and our settlement here. We've appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. And we've conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections with correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and congeniality. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for a rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as a free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right to do. And for the support of this declaration, with the firm reassurance of the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our honor. Signed, Button Gwinnett, Layman Hall, George Walton, William Hooper, Joseph Hawes, John Penn, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., Arthur Middleton, John Hancock, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll, George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, John Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Ross, Caesar Rodney, George Reid, Thomas McKean, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, Lewis Morris, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, Abraham Clark, Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Paine, Elbridge Gerry, Stephen Hawkins, William Ellery, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, Oliver Wolcott, and Matthew Thornton. I'm not saying there are things that aren't wrong with this document. You notice every one of those names was a white male. It's a process of making things in the world more right that we're going through. And I think there are things in the world that need to be made more right now. Therefore, it's a work in progress, and we've regressed to quite an extent in a lot of ways. But this piece of writing means more to me than almost anything. Coming from a family that migrated here with nothing. And there are wrongs in the world. There are wrongs in America. There are horrible things happening in America. But I honestly do believe that everyone, and I mean everyone, has a right to grab their bootstraps and pull themselves up and make their life and the world they live in a better place. So I'm sharing this with you on Independence Day 2020. More than anything, because the world might be messed up, but there is hope. And I just need to share that with you. I need to remember it, and you need to remember it. And anyone who stopped by here today, I greatly appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I'm going to go ahead and let you discuss this. In the meantime, please, my friends, here and abroad, be excellent to one another. PLUR. And party on.